I like the idea that I can watch the games of the chess Olympiad from more than 80 years ago, and today we watch the round 11. For round 11, the author of the book selected a game between Sweden, Mr. Lundin, that is white, against Alexander from England. Lundin opens with knight f3, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, c5. And this is the semi-Tarrasch. Yeah, in the semi-Tarrasch the shape of a middle game depends largely on who does the exchanging and in what order. Frequently, white proceeds at once with c takes d5. But Lundin defers the exchange with bishop g5. Only a few months before this game, Udovic had won a famous miniature from Fine during the latter's first visit to Russia. From the diagram position, Udovic continued, and I think it's nice to see it because Fine was also a top player of that period. C takes d4, so this is the game Fine Udovic. Knight, sorry, I made a mistake. C takes d4, knight takes d4, e5, knight d, b5, a6, knight takes d5, a takes b5, knight takes f6, check, and now there is an amazing move. Can you guess what black played? This is really an amazing move, so I hope you will take a minute, analyze the position and see what you would do if you were black. Okay? If you were black. So this was the move. Queen takes f6 and black won because after you play this, what happens? You see, this is a problem that happens also in other opening, that practically the king is trapped, and so you need to use this, right? But once you exchange, at this point, yes, black has a terrible pawn structure, no doubt about that, but he has one knight more, so once you're exchanging the pieces, the endgame is easily won. So let's see what it said. Now, although Alexander was never considered remarkable for opening erudition, he had the knack of keeping out of trouble. Okay, so it seems that Alexander did avoid this trap. So let's see what happens. And let's go back to the position. So let's see if I remember the moves. I think it was knight f3, right? Yeah, knight f3, knight f6, c4, e6, no, we made knight c3, d5, d4, c5, the semi-Tarrasch, and now white continue with bishop g5. Okay, so Alexander played a move that is d takes c4, while instead Udovic continue with c takes d4. Okay? e3, knight c6, bishop takes c4, c takes d4, and e takes d4. So once more we see the isolated queen pawn. Again, it seems silly because people want to improve in chess at once magically, and so they watch games, but they say, oh, I don't gain anything from watching games. Well, in reality you need to pay attention to what? To the isolated queen pawn. In this way you need to see how black will be able to exploit such a thing, so fight against the isolated queen pawn and win, probably in the endgame, okay? So let's see what happens. Bishop e7, castle, castle, rook e1, knight d5, bishop takes d5, and e takes d5, and now we have both isolated queen pawn for both sides. Now the complexion of the game has changed, the d-file is blocked, and the two isolated pawns neutralize each other, but they have very different fates in store for them. Bishop takes e7, knight takes e7, queen b3, and b6. There seems to be little in the game. The natural and good move for white would be rook c1. Instead, Lundin now led astray by Samastru's maneuvering, which decentralizes queen and actually allows black queen rook to develop before the white one. Wow, in fact the Lundin queen rook does not steer until move 27. That's amazing. Okay, so here the maneuver that white does, queen a3, bishop e6, knight g5, which seems a mistake, knight c6, knight takes e6, f take e6. After the white attack, black now has the valuable f5 at his disposal. Okay, f5. White could take the e pawn, but only at the cost of his own d pawn. So, takes, takes. So what does white do? White played queen a4. And now black continue with rook a c8, rook takes e6, queen h4, attacking this, okay? Alexander is happy, the position is charged with tactical possibilities. Obviously it's attacking this, but it's also attacking this, okay? So that's the very interesting point of this queen h4. g3, this weakening move, which gives Alexander access to the white squares, is unavoidable, because rook f1 would have been answered by knight takes d4, not attacking only this rook, but it was threatening rook takes c3, and then the threat would have been knight e2 check. So obviously it's a kind of a problem for white to find a move which save everything. So he played g3, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and rook d6. The white isolated pawn has vanished. The black one remains as a winning asset. Knight f3, check, king g2, d4, knight d5, and rook c2. And now there is knight f4, very interesting move. See the diagram, okay. The British Chess Magazine gave Alexander analysis running as far as move 38 to demonstrate that white would have been even worse off. after king f1. Okay, so nothing. Here would have been a very long analysis, but obviously the author didn't think to bore us with that. But you are black in this position. What would you play? Okay, what move would you play? Because again, in order to learn something from watching these games, from time to time, you need to do some exercise. The exercise is, now you're black, what would you play? Alexander played knight h4 check, which is great, right? And now there is king h3. Obviously, if you take, it takes, and then this becomes kind of problematic, right? So, king h3, knight f5, and rook d7. White's priority is to hold back the passed pawn. Black is to see that white does not get a chance to double rooks on the 7th rank. This is the 7th rank, right? So, in particular, it would be risky for the c2 rook to quit the c file, even to win a pawn. So, that's why he's not taking this, because it doesn't want to give white an open file to then attack his king, okay? So what did black play in this position? He played rook e8, rook d1, g5, knight h5, now there is the possible fork, rook e6, rook takes a7, rook takes f2, and rook c1. Instantly seizing the file, now white will get the 7th rank with that what looks like dangerous counterplay. Already he threatens mate in 2, yeah, obviously rook c8, rook e8, rook takes e8, checkmate. But Alexander has calculated that he can hold off the attack, making good use of his king, and presently push the pawn. After all, white has voluntarily abandoned the d file. So let's see what it does. It plays knight e7. So that's a way to give his king an escape square. Rook 1 c7, king f7, rook d7, and rook e4. And the move protecting the vital pawn and threatening g4. Wow, beautiful move. g4, rook e3, knight g3, d3. Another square is conquered. Come on, now it's just 2 squares away from promotion. Things are becoming really tough. Rook f3. The white rook humbly leaves the 7th rank to hold up the pawn, but its triumphant advance can no longer be prevented. Rook d2, b4, king e6, rook d4, knight d5. With all eyes on the d-pawn, Alexander has not forgotten that the white king is in a mating net. Wow. If he plays here, it starts to be a problem, right? So, let's see what happens. Rook e4. And now, your turn as black. And what would you play if you are black? So pause the video and try to find the move. Black played king f6. Why? Because if you take on e3, knight f4 is checkmate. Okay? So obviously cannot play that. Rook a8, knight f4, rook takes f4, g takes f4, rook f8, king e5, rook f5, king d4, rook takes f4, king c3, a4, rook a2, rook f8, d2, rook c8, king takes b4, rook d8, and I think obviously now the game is over. Rook e1. So as you can see, in this game we had a very great example of the isolated queen pawn and how to win with the isolated queen pawn. So for me it was a beautiful game to see, that will definitely improve our middle game knowledge. So I hope you enjoyed this video. See you at the next round.